Workers in the agricultural, industrial, and commercial establishments can expect an adjustment in their minimum wages, ranging from 55 pesos to 110 pesos additional fee per day.
There is no doubt that wages have to be increased, but to those who can afford to increase it. So we have collective bargaining agreements. Of course, there will be wage distortions that will have to be adjusted because as they mandate the wage increases. We're prepared for that. But then again, we are also facing huge commodity price increases now, which we can not pass fully because the consumers cannot afford, and we're scared of a collapse in demand.
The effects of the economic slump in the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic still resonate in business and in daily life. What will be the economic outlook under the new administration? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our guests and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of The Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao. Also joining us in a short while will be Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. But now joining us is Attorney Domingo Igon Cayosa, former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. Good evening, sir, and welcome back to The Chiefs.
Good evening, Ed. Good
Yes, sir.
evening, everyone.
Yes, sir. Sir, against Bongbong Marcos, specifically yung cancellation ng kanyang COC. Now, we do know na the COMELEC has already ruled, the division and the ANBank has already ruled on the previous petitions. And now comes this one. Ano pong significance itong nasa Supreme Court? And what would be the main considerations of the Supreme Court in looking at what is technically or effectively the same case as before?
Well, it's simply an appeal from the decision of the COMELEC. No? The petitioners believe that the COMELEC acted with grave abuse of discretion, amounting to excess or lack of jurisdiction. So that's why they went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, as we all know under the Constitution, has jurisdiction to review decisions of the COMELEC. And
Yes, sir.
even COMELEC itself has this early said, whatever the decision of the Supreme Court, they will abide by that. So it's a simple appeal. And of course, it covers the same issues raised and litigated before the COMELEC. So ngayon, inakyat nila sa Supreme Court and whatever the decision of the Supreme Court will be the final ruling on the case.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But of course, without going into the merits, because it's already been filed, but without going into that, what would the Supreme Court look at, or what would the Supreme Court look for? Would it need, for example, new evidence, new arguments, or can it just rely on the old evidence presented before the COMELEC?
Well, normally the Supreme Court just rules on questions of law. No? Yung evidential, linabas na yan dun sa COMELEC. And it's pretty simple naman. The facts are, most of them are not disputed. It's just the interpretation of the laws.
Oh, yes, sir.
The National Internal Revenue Code, the election laws, the Constitution. So questions of law lang ito. And of course, whether or not the decision of the COMELEC is correct or was arrived at with grave abuse of discretion. So madali lang dapat ito, Ed, no?
Yes, sir.
This is not, the issues raised here and the arguments are not new. And the Supreme Court has in previous cases ruled on similar issues. So sana bilisan nila.
Oh, that's interesting. The Supreme Court has ruled on similar issues before. So, sir, would it be fair to ask you anong likelihood?
It's okay. It's okay. No.
Kung anong likelihood na whether mag-grant or ma-reject, ma-dismiss?
Yes, and meron naman ng mga jurisprudence, no. For example, the case of former Congressman Halos-Los.
Yes, sir.
Halos-Los, nanalo siya sa boto, but since the Supreme Court found him to be disqualified, sabi nila the popular vote cannot trump the rule of law. Ibig sabihin, kung disqualified ka on the merits, disqualified ka regardless of your vote, you will not sit as elected official. So I'm not saying that will be the decision here, but what is clear is that these issues have been litigated before the Supreme Court in many different ways in the past. So it's not something new.
Yes, sir. Sir, going back to the Holosos case, again, this is not to say that this will have the same ruling, but the Holosos case, the Supreme Court then ruled that the popular vote cannot trump the rule of law, at least in that particular case.
Yes.
So hindi siya pinupo.
And that should be the case, no? That should be the case. Because the Supreme, of course, they can take notice of the published results of the election, though not yet final and official. But the Supreme Court, as it should be, will and must decide the case on the merits.
Yes, sir.
Regardless of what the politics would show or tell them. Ganun naman dapat ang disiplina. And we trust that they would do the same.
Yes, sir.
What we hope for really, Ed, and for the good of this country, is that they rule on this quickly. Kasi magbibilangan na ng boto, magka-canvas na, magpro-proclaim na. No? So, kung kaya namang desisyonan bago yon, mas maganda sana para maiwasan ang gulo. No? Of course, again, the Supreme Court in some instances has changed its has abandoned jurisprudence.
Yes, sir.
Every now and then. So maaari ding i-junk nila yung Halos case and say the popular will, the voice of the people, the voice of God, and all of these mga legal maxims. We don't know what will happen. But for us, we hope they will resolve it one way or the other, preferably on the merits.
Yes, sir. But sir, in the case of the halosos issue, I suppose in that sense, it was a question of whether his election by popular vote trumps yun nga the rule of law. But what if you introduce other elements here? For example, whether or not there was a misrepresentation in the filing of a COC or the facts of the COC and so on that line, in which case may iba na pong elements involved, may ibang variables involved. As well, yung question of moral turpitude, that may also be another variable. So may ibang layers.
Yes, this is not exactly the same as the Harosos case. Ang nilalabas nila dito, yung disqualification daw niya based on the provision of the National Internal Revenue Code. When you're convicted of a crime of violating the Internal Revenue Code, one of the automatic, according to the petitioners, a penalty is that you're perpetually disqualified from public office and the right
Yes,
to
sir.
vote. Sinasite nila yan. COMELEC disagrees with them. Ang sabi ng COMELEC, wala namang penalty of perpetual disqualification. It cannot be imposed against him. Ang sabi ng petitioners, automatic ko yan. Hindi na kinakailangan sabihin ng korte kasi nasa batas naman na. So that's one. The other one, of course, is the element of fraud. And sinasabi nila, nung sinabi niya na have you been convicted of a crime
Moral turpitude.
which involves disqualification from my, sabi niya, hindi. So, magkakaiba din ang interpretation dyan. The other one that they're including now, I don't know why they do that, is yung issue about the unpaid estate taxes. I don't know how far that will go. But of course, when you go to the Supreme Court, you bring all the arguments that you can muster siguro. And it is for the Supreme Court to decide whether or not these are still relevant or it is still timely for you to do that.
Yes, sir.
So, may ibang-iba ito, very particularized, but the legal principles and jurisprudence are there. So, hindi naman ito first time na mga similar issues dinadala sa Supreme Court. And that's what we are harping at, na kaya siguro ng Supreme Court ito desisyonan sa lalong madaling panahon.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'd like to ask you to run us through scenarios. Given that by next week, malamang ma-proclaim na, at least mag-i-start ng canvassing ng Congress for the President and the Vice President. So, I suppose at least in a week or so, a week and a half, magkakaroon na ng proclamation ng President and the Vice President. So, of course, the questions would be, and I'm sure you already thought about this, questions would be, what if the Supreme Court decides before proclamation versus after proclamation versus before inauguration versus after inauguration? Ano-ano po yung mga senaryo nun? If you can, kung pwedeng himay-himayin kung sino ang, kung sakali lang, sinong uupo at paano ang proseso?
Una, Ed, the first question ng marami is, maantala ba yung canvassing and proclamation? Because of this petition to the Supreme Court, the answer to that is, unless the Supreme Court issues a temporary restraining order or issues an injunction to stop the canvassing and proclamation, tuloy yan.
Yes, sir.
Regardless of the pendency of the case. Next is, if the Supreme Court grants the petition at sabi niyang mali yung yung COMELEC, dapat disqualified si Senator Marcos or President-elect Marcos, what will happen now? The Vice President-elect will act as President until the President is chosen and qualifies for the position. So next is, since it is, kung ganyan, kung assuming, just assuming that ang decision nila is disqualified si Senator Marcos, ang question is, sino ngayon ang magiging presidente? Based on the more recent jurisprudence of the Supreme Court, ang sinasabi ng Supreme Court dito, kung disqualified yung frontrunner o yung may pinakamaraming boto, ang legal effect nan, as if stray votes lahat mga yon, nasayang lang. So ngayon, ang makakanvas na boto o mapoproklama yung second highest number.
Second highest.
wala nang special election. Kasi nga naman, ang effect ho kasi ng disqualification is that as if the candidate never ran.
Yes, sir.
So this is based on the more recent jurisprudence of the Supreme Court. We don't know whether or not they'll stick to that. Abangan ang susunod na kabanata. But we pray, Ed, na gawin nila ito sa lalong madaling panahon.
Yes, sir. And I suppose we all join you in that prayer na sana ma-resolve na lahat ng issues as soon as possible kasi otherwise everybody's on tenterhooks.
Yes, but of course, the other question really is ito rin, no? Assuming wala pang decision ng Supreme Court, walang TRO, walang injunction, so dapat diretso pa rin ang canvassing ng Kongreso.
Yes, sir.
At kung sinong ipaproclaim ng Kongreso na President-elect, Vice President-elect, yun ang manunumpa and will assume office noon time of June 30 of this year. No? Yan ang nakasaad sa ating konstitusyon. So yung issue naman na plano daw ni Vice President-elect Sara manumpa, pwede ba yun? In my opinion, pwede yan sapagkat wala namang nakasaad sa konstitusyon kung kailan pwedeng manumpa yung mga nananalong President at Vice President. It only says they have to take an oath of office which the Constitution codes o nakalagay sa but ang nakalagay before they assume office. So hindi
Yes, sir.
naman sinasabing on the day o on the noon time of June 30. So pwede sa tingin ko, pwede silang manumpa before that, but they cannot assume office until their term starts. Which under, again, the Constitution starts at noon time of June 30th.
Yes, sir. Well, sir, always a pleasure to have you with us. We hope to see you again. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us. Former IBP President Domingo Cayosa. Sir, ingat po parate.
Maraming salamat. Good night.
And let's now move on to election updates. With us via Zoom is COMELEC Commissioner Attorney George Garcia. And of course, also joining us this time is Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Commissioner, good evening and thank you for joining us. Ami, kumusta kayo dyan sa binahaba kayo?
Good evening, maraming baha all over Metro Manila, no? Talagang mukhang patapos na rin sa wakasyong summer. Kaya lang, ayan naman ang mga baha.
Yes, sir. Commissioner, kayo po, hindi naman ho kayo binaha.
Wala po, nasa PICC po kami.
Ayun, yun lang.
Dahil nga po sa canvassing.
Hindi kayo babahin dyan. Kung sakali, baka lumubog lang. Sir, anyway, sir, of course, we want to talk about election updates, but also, before we get there, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you na rin. Nag-file nga ng petition yung grupo ni Father Buenafe with the Supreme Court this time. Again, on the disqualification case. Does this in any way affect yung projected canvassing ng votes for President and Vice President by Congress? Will this have any effect in the meantime?
Naku, Sir Ed, alam niyo kung ako lang ay practitioner ngayon, sasagutin kita, pati yung tinatanong mo kay Attorney kayo sa kanina, i-analyze ko sa iyo yun eh. Pero siyempre po dahil nasa commission election tayo, sa amin wala pong effect yan sa amin whatsoever sa ginagawa naming canvassing as to what will happen sa congressional canvassing. Hindi po natin malaman. Siyempre nag-exercise na po ng jurisdiction ang ating kagalang-galang na Korte Suprema. Tama po yung sinabi kanina ni Attorney Cayosa, unless mag-issue ang Korte Suprema ng restraining order, then katulad din ng sa amin, bilang isang canvassing body, we will have to proceed and complete our task under the Constitution. At kami naman po bilang respondent sa kasong yan, then therefore po maghihintay kami kung ano po yung ipag-aata sa atin ng Korte Suprema, kung kami isasagot o whatever man. Siyempre, alam niyo naman po, Sir Ed, ako po yung nag-inhibit doon sa kasong yan, hindi ako nag-participate.
Yes, sir.
And therefore, kami ay ipagtatanggol ng Solicitor General sa kaso po yan.
Ami?
Ulitin ko lang yung mga tanong ni Ed kanina. Baka gusto nyo lang i-affirm kung ano nga mangyayari. Kasi si Mayor Sara may balak na early inauguration, which is
early.
Pwede naman di ba? Pero magkakaroon na ng Vice President yung ba epekto nun. What will happen kapag ang Supreme Court binaliktad yung ruling ninyo at dinisqualify nga si Bongbong Marcos at meron nang na-inaugurate na Vice President?
Madami pong implikasyon yun kasi ito po kasi ang problem natin dyan. Tama po yung binabanggit kanina ni Attorney Cayosa kasi kaso ko rin po yung Halosos versus COMELEC na sinasabi niya. Pero at the same time, ang problem po kasi may nakalagay din kasi sa Constitution, what if the President elect will not qualify at the beginning of the term. May mga ganun po kasi. Tapos at the same time, may Supreme Court decision doon sa effect naman ng isang na-disqualify o na-cancel ang candidacy. The proper terminology should really be cancellation of candidacy. Kung yun po
Yes,
yung
sir.
na-file. Kasi iba po yung effect ng disqualification per se at iba pa naman po yung effect ng cancellation of candidacy per se. So, hindi ko po alam kung ano yung pinaka-nature ng na-file na kaso, whether it's disqualification or cancellation of candidacy. And tatandaan po rin natin na yung po kasing case, kung hindi po ako nagkakamali, it's Buenafe versus the Commission on Election
Yes, sir.
et al. So, kami po yung dinidemanda po doon. Mukhang hindi naman po kasama doon ng National Board of Canvassers doon sa naidemanda doon sa case na yon. So, what is the effect just in case magkaroon ng reversal ng amin pong so doon po papasok sa aking palagay yung either provision ng Constitution o yung naging desisyon ng Korte Suprema sa kung sino in the meantime halimbawa po ang papalit, yung bang Vice President o yung second placer as the case may be.
So sino nga in that case? Kung
Hindi ko po sasagutin yung kaso dahil nga po sa una nag-inhibit ako, number 1 po, number 2, siyempre po sub judice na sa kasalukuyan. Ito lang po ang sasagutin ko. Sa kaso po ng cancellation of candidacy, sa kahit anong posisyon, nagdesisyon po ang Korte Suprema na in several cases, Alosos versus Comelec, sa kaso rin po ng Aratea versus the Commission on Election, and 14 cases, all other 14 cases, kapag cancellation of candidacy as if there was no elected
Yes, sir.
winner, yung nanalong yon, the first placer. So whoever is the second placer or the candidate with the next highest number of votes should be proclaimed as the winner. So yung po ay kapag cancellation of candidacy. And not unlike yung pong tinatawag, Ma'am Ami, na disqualification, kung after the election you were disqualified, then ang magiging effect po ay succession. Kung yan ay mayor, yung vice mayor po ang uupo. Kasi bakit? Kasi hindi naman na-cancel yung kanyang kandidatura, candidate pa rin siya, kaya lang may na-violate siya na isang rule o may na-violate siyang provision of law and therefore tatanggalin siya at ang papalit ay yung succession. Kaya
Yes,
very
sir.
crucial po sa mga ganyang katanungan kung yung po bang na-file ay cancellation of candidacy o disqualification. Ngayon, ang sasabihin niyo pong katanungan sunod, ano mo magdi-distinguish kung disqualification siya o cancellation of candidacy? Doon po sa napakadami ng desisyon ng Supreme Court ang sinasabi, kapag po kasi cancellation of candidacy, it should refer to a misrepresentation over a material fact, which is either age, citizenship, residency, registration as a voter, and literacy. Doon naman po nagsinungaling ka doon nagsinungaling ka, kaya ka pinaparusahan, hindi because you are not, you do not qualify or you do not have the eligibility, pero nagsinungaling ka. Dito naman po sa disqualification, simply because you violated the rules of the ball game. Nag-vote buying ka, hindi ka nagsubmit ng SOSE, and such other enumeration doon po sa batas natin.
yung question about moral turpitude involving yung sa tax case, cancellation ba yun?
Sa ano po kasi sa section 12 ng Omnibus Election Code nakalagay po doon yung those who have been convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude, yan po ay ang tawag po sa amin nagpa-practice yung mga disqualification cases. Hindi po siya pumasok kasi nga po parang lumalabas ay wala po siya doon sa mismong sa mismong mga rules on eligibility o yung pagsisinungaling. But of course, alam niyo po, ang Korte Suprema natin, in such other cases din, pwede niyang i-expand po kasi nag-i-expand po rin kasi siya ng definition ng misrepresentation. Halimbawa po, sa isang kaso, yung 3 consecutive term limitation, Castillo versus the Commission on Election, yung 3 consecutive term limitation, ang sabi ng Supreme Court, hindi naman siya age, citizenship, residency, registration as a voter, and literacy. Pero nag-aapat na term ka na and therefore the proper petition that should have been filed against you is a cancellation of candidacy and therefore it should be yung second placer ang susunod sa iyo, hindi yung by succession. So ibig sabihin, yun po, kita niyo po, wala sa 5 qualification pero kinonsider ng Supreme Court na pagsisinungaling yon o misrepresentation. So, the Supreme Court can always do that po in the interpretation of our existing law.
Sir,
Balikan ko
just
pa
to
yung moral turpitude. Kasi yung moral turpitude, meron diyang personal opinions, di ba? Pwede rin magbago yung opinion ng Supreme Court doon sa issue yon.
Yung po kasing kung mapapansin po niyo yung issue ng moral turpitude and basta mama, I will not be referring to any particular case kasi nga po, una nag-inhibit ako. Basta I will be referring from the academic point of view. Alam niyo po kasi on a case-to-case basis ang treatment ng Supreme Court when it comes to the issue of moral turpitude. Halimbawa po, libel. In one case, sinabi na ng Supreme Court na yung libel ay a crime involving moral turpitude. Halimbawa, and yet it is punishable only by fine. Hindi na po ito imprisonment sa kasalukuyan. So, meron naman sinasabi, halimbawa po ang pagnanakaw ay isang crime involving moral turpitude. So, nakadepende po sa ating kataas-taasang hukuman kung ano yung ika-classify niya as moral turpitude depending on the nature of the crime by itself. Now, yung pong binabanggit yung kaso as to whether that is a crime involving moral turpitude, then perhaps it will be now dependent talaga sa magiging interpretasyon ng Korte Suprema. Tama po kayo doon.
Yes, sir. Sir, just to be clear, yung final kanina na ni Attorney Ted Te was a request for a TRO to stop the canvass of votes and to declare the candidacy of Bongbong Marcos as void or to cancel his candidacy.
Cancellation.
So it's not a disqualification per se. So yun
Tama
pong
po,
hinahabol
tama
nila.
po.
Yes, sir. Pero, sir, does it make any difference whether or not the Supreme Court acts on this petition before proclamation, after proclamation, before inauguration, after inauguration? Would that have any bearing on ano?
Siyempre po, dahil nga sa may issue ng sub judice, ako naman po, base sa aking karanasan bilang isang nag-practice before ng election, sa election law, alam niyo po, sa isang nanalo o sa isang tumakbo o sa isang kandidato, it is always the best scenario na madesisyonan po yung kaso ninyo na mas mabilis.
Yes, sir.
Kahit po doon sa mga naghahabol o doon sa mga mamamayan. Ako yung nanalo, ako po yung kandidato, that's a sword hanging above me. Anytime pwede bumagsak yan. Tapos may agam-agam kung talaga bang ikaw ba ay lehitimong nanalo o ikaw ba ay talagang kwalipikado. At the same time, doon naman po sa hindi pinalad sa mga ganyang klaseng kaso, gusto rin niyang ma-resolve kaagad kasi in the first place, kung hindi pala naman kwalipikado yun o hindi naman pala talaga dapat nahalal, din ako dapat ang nahalal lang. And to the sovereign naman, yung mga bumoto, ay napaka-importante rin po na kung yung binoto nila ay nasayang ba yung boto o yung binoto ba nila ay tama yung naging boto. So to a certain extent, expeditious resolution of the controversy benefits everybody. It benefits the petitioner, it benefits the respondent, it benefits the people who cast their votes on election day.
Pero realistically, ano yung expeditious? Considering yung period na bibigay, siyempre, pasasagutin yung kabila, pasasagutin kayo. Ano yung realistic period for resolving this case?
Siyempre po, ito ay ating kagalang-galang na Supreme Court. Sila naman po ay may nakalagay din sa saligang batas kung kailan sila makakapag-resolve. Pero alam niyo po kasi sa ating pong karanasan kapag case of transcendental importance, pina-prioritize po yan ng Korte Suprema, kaya po siya ay case of transcendental importance.
So minimum nga, yung, di ba 2 weeks, di ba? 2 weeks yung minimum na to answer. So ano yung pinakamabilis sa isip niyo? Pinakamabilis?
Kasi po sa Korte Suprema, ma'am, para lang po malaman nyo yung pinakamabilis, iraraffle ang kaso. Pagka po kasi lahat ng kaso galing sa COMELEC, it's always en banc. Wala pong division sa Supreme Court dyan. So iraraffle ang kaso sa isang ponente, whatever is the recommendation of the ponente to the case, then that will be the action of the Supreme Court. Kalimitan po, pagka po nag-require Supreme Court in a petition like that, to file answer, 10 days lang po. 10 days, minsan po may nakalagay na inextendable period pa of 10 days. So you will have to file immediately the comment to the said petition. Minsan naman po nakalagay lang 10 days, so it's up to the parties. How do you interpret the word 10 days? Is it extendable or is it subject to extension? Minsan may ganun po yun. Minsan naman po talagang pag walang nakitang grave abuse of discretion ng Supreme Court, ng AMI, dismiss ka agad ng Supreme Court yung mismong petition without even requiring the filing of any comment or opposition to the petition.
So posible kayang matapos siya before noon of June 30?
Hindi ko po talaga pwedeng ma-preempt ang ating Korte Suprema. Kami po mga abogado, may mga pamamaraan po kami para makapag-apila doon sa kung saan man nakapending yung isang kaso na makapag-resolve ka agad. We can always file motions so that the court may immediately resolve the case or motions to give an immediate attention to the case because of the importance of the case as far as the certain scenarios are concerned.
Okay.
Okay. COMELEC Commissioner George Garcia. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight at ang ganda talaga ng background ninyo. Parang PhD talaga.
Oo nga.
Maraming salamat po mga Ami, Sir Ed. Maraming salamat.
Ingat, sir.
Yan, Commissioner.
Thank you po.
Please stay with us. At Cheese, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Chiefs here on One News, and now joining us is Joey Concepcion, the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship. Sir, good evening and welcome back to Chiefs.
Good evening, Secretary.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Ed, and
Yes, sir.
good evening, Ami.
Sir, of course, as everybody already is aware, nag-minimum wage hike sa NCR at sa Western Visayas. Now, you've also been quoted as saying na sana merong exemption for micro entrepreneurs. Pero just for clarity, sir, were you saying that you want exemption for the micro entrepreneurs, or were you saying that there's already a provision that may be implemented granting exemption to micro entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it's very important to give the exemptions to the micro entrepreneurs. There is a provision for those who have registered with the DTI under the Bambi group, which is basically you have to register. There's about 6,000 of them who have registered. But, we have more than 1 million micro entrepreneurs all over the country. So what will happen is that they will have to apply. And as we know, these micro entrepreneurs, they don't have the manpower to apply. They'll have to go through that whole process. And we all know that in the pandemic, the first ones to really get hit bad are our smallest entrepreneurs, the micro entrepreneurs. And these are people who actually are what I call survival entrepreneurs. They're just, some of them can't get a job, so they put up a store to sell, whatever they can sell, more or less food products, etc. So this is the group that I've been helping for the last 16 years, the MSMEs. And I'm not saying we exempt all MSMEs. The SMEs, the small medium enterprises, maybe provided they're not under distress, then they should be fine. Although there's also provision. They were saying that what do you call this? All they need to do is apply, and they could be granted. But that will take some time. But my own feeling is that many of them will not be able to afford paying anyway the minimum wage, the new minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the government has said they cannot provide a blanket exemption, and yun na nga, they will have to apply. So, ano kaya pwedeng compromise? Maybe the government can facilitate application. What might be a compromise there?
Well, hopefully the incoming Trade Secretary will be able to find a solution here. I don't know if Secretary Mon will be able to act on this immediately. But from my own point of view, many of our micro entrepreneurs are just challenged with the whole environment. And while businesses have rebounded, as we've seen in the first quarter of this year, GDP going above 8%, those are good news. But there's a lot of pressure now. Many of them are selling products at high prices, because as we purchase raw materials, because of the commodity prices have gone really through the roof. I mean, we're passing gradually these price increases to basically the retailers. And most of our micro entrepreneurs are retailers, sari-sari store owners. Some are carinderias, and the list goes on. So they could see a softening of demand, because consumers are maybe also hard-pressed with the high cost of products now in the market. So, and many of them have loans that have been restructured. So they're challenged with all of this. And my point really is, what is important is job generation. The country cannot afford to slacken. The growth that I look at is we have to hit above 7%. We borrowed quite a big amount of money to fund our build, and the pandemic response that we did. I mean, in terms of vaccine procurement, that's a huge amount that we've spent. Our debt today is 12.68 trillion pesos. So there is no way that the country can slacken in its growth. It has to maintain this high growth for us to be able to maintain our investment grade. And we can't even bring up alert levels. Now, if the infection would spike down the road, and for now, we're in a great spot. But nobody can be sure about the future. And then you will have problems in lockdowns and and all of this reduction in mobility. So we are in a situation that we're doing fine in this pandemic, hopefully moving to endemic, but we have the Ukraine-Russian crisis, no? And of course the pressure of the consumers, no? I mean, purchasing consumer spending can weaken, and when that weakens, then we're also in trouble.
Well, that's what the labor groups are saying, that we have a consumer-driven economy, and increasing wages will increase the purchasing power. What's your comment on that?
That's correct. I mean, but what I'm referring to is that those that are in a fragile state, and I'm not saying the entire private sector will not accept these wage increases. I mean, the larger corporations, while we have our own collective bargaining agreements already, the wage increases wages are really increasing anyway to our collective bargaining agreements. It is the most vulnerable sector that I am trying to protect. No, this is the micro entrepreneurs. No, I'm not saying the small entrepreneurs. Okay, fine, if they will not be given the exemptions, but the micro entrepreneurs are the ones that employ no more than 10 people, and most of the people that they employ are relatives anyway. No, so that's what I'm trying to push. No, that we give them more leeway. I think then this next administration is going to push for more inclusive growth. No, and I think that is what we have to try to achieve. No, whereby the economy is not growing only with the medium to large corporations, but it's a more inclusive growth whereby micro and small entrepreneurs are also growing. And they have the handicap. No? They don't have the financial strength that medium and large corporations do have. They borrow from microfinance institutions, or even 5-6 if their credit is not quite clear. No? So these are the struggling entrepreneurs that we're trying to help, and they're bulk of the whole sector. And actually, they're bulk of those that voted for BBM. No, if you look at it, this sector in our engagements and with BBM and the micro entrepreneurs and the candidatos, it was very clear, no, that they are looking forward to his presidency at that time, no, that their lives will change, will improve, no. And so, I mean, I think it's about time that we really push for greater inclusivity in our economy.
Sir, perhaps you can lay out the landscape for us. You've said before na yung MSMEs account for mga 99% thereabouts of the industry.
Yep.
What about the micro? How big a chunk is micro of the business sector?
Well, they're basically 90%. No, they're the bulk. I mean, you can see them all over. No, your medium, your micro and small are really the bulk of the smallest businesses in this country. No, that includes also the farmers. No, and so these are the sector that we're throwing the lifeline. In fact, they're the most vulnerable during the pandemic. For the last 2 years, they've been really challenged because of the whole lockdowns, and unfortunately, unlike larger corporations, the business confidence, I mean the banking confidence, wanes when there are problems in the economy, and they tend to pull back lending. No, and remember, these micro entrepreneurs, they also lend through the palista in the notebook. When people buy, what delata from their sari-sari stores, they have a notebook, and people just write down what they got. No, so they have that. It's been innate in the whole system for many generations now. No, so the sari-sari stores are powerful. No, if you want to be a market leader in a product, you have to be sold in the sari-sari stores, because you're hitting the mass-based market, the consumer market. No, so soft drinks, beer, etc., cigarettes, cell-load, etc. I mean, they are powerful combined together. No, but individually, many of them do struggle because they are hand to mouth. No, banks, they don't have a credit line. I mean, they're just given a line, and once they use that, their working capital, and if they deplete that, one alert level moving up, and there's lockdowns, then they can wipe out their cash. No, So this is a sector that I think we really have to support. No? And it's the way I see it. What's more important, Ed and Ami, is that we need to generate jobs. That's the most important thing that we have to do. As we generate more jobs, then the economy will do better. There will be more taxpayers, and the Philippines will do better because we have now leveraged our balance sheet where we are spending on build, which is essential for us to grow. But remember, with all of this pandemic and Ukraine, Russia, these are things that we never predicted before. No, so growth has to be there. No, the moment we don't grow as a country, basically the private sector is the engine of the government in driving growth. No? So because we pay, as we sell more products, we make money, we pay taxes. No? And of course, if you employ more people, people can pay taxes. No? That's the most important. No? So that is very essential as we move through the next administration. I mean, let's make a difference this time. A more inclusive economy is what we need. No?
Yes, sir. Sir, I think a lot of people do understand what you're driving at, that the micro entrepreneurs really are in a very sensitive, precarious position. But at the same time, given the numbers that you cited, 90% of business belong to the micro entrepreneur side. If we do exempt all the micro entrepreneurs, that means that the minimum wage becomes the exception instead of the rule. In effect, 90% of employees would be, I suppose, exempted.
Well, not 90% of all employees. No, if we look at it, let's put it this way:
yes,
micro, small, and medium enterprises basically employ about 60% of the workforce. No, that's more or less the calculation. And micro entrepreneurs per se, they would employ 5, less than 10 people. In fact, that's where the exception is being granted. No, for as long as they're below 10 employees, then they can file for the exemption of the minimum wage. No, and they should register with MAMBI. No, so I think it's very clear that that sector needs help. Now, for the medium and large, small, medium, and obviously large corporations, they can take more, what do you call this? They can take more stress in their business. No? And I'm not saying, there are also many, the tourism sector for one, for the last 2 years, has been hit hard by the pandemic. No? So they're just coming back. So that's another sector, many of them, large corporations who own big tourism hotels, casinos, and all of that, they've invested and they've leveraged their balance sheet. No? So they are also getting out of that challenging situation for the last 2 years. So certain sectors have done well, certain sectors are not doing well. So those that are under rehab will also be exempted. We are not challenging that, but they already cited that those who are under rehabilitation can be exempted. I'm just focusing on the micro entrepreneurs just to ensure that these people who are the smallest, in fact, they're, to me, survival entrepreneurs. Many of them have not even finished school, and we're helping them through mentorship programs together with DTI. These are the people that we're trying to help scale up. We don't want them to be micro entrepreneurs forever. We want them to move up to become small and medium and hopefully large one day. No?
You've been bullish about the incoming administration, and you say that inclusive growth is possible under the Marcos administration. Can you expound more on this? Can you be more specific? What can be done? Because inclusive growth has eluded previous administrations.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I think if under the Duterte administration, I mean, he continued the build program, no? And I think that is the right step forward, and we should continue under the Marcos administration. This infrastructure build up, connecting farm to market roads, that's important, airports, bridges, these are all creating connectivity. No, you've got the digital connectivity, now you have the offline connectivity, and as we make the rural areas closer to the capital area, I mean, people will benefit from that. No? And this is why I believe that the Marcos administration has the greatest opportunity. He garnered 31 million votes. That's a huge number. Bulk of that, of those who voted for BBM, belong to the underprivileged. No? These are our small, many of them are small entrepreneurs, no? Who voted for BBM. So I think his slogan of unity becomes more real if we really implement that. Because to me, unity will bring greater prosperity. You know, maybe this might be a situation where Leni Robredo with her Angat Buhay will come out and also support. No, it would be nice to see both parties coming together and really making lives better for our poor people. No, I mean, especially our micro and small entrepreneurs. No, and this is the change that hopefully could happen. No, I mean, I'm just being on the optimistic side. No, because Leni has her Angat Buhay, BBM has the passion to really help our small business people. Why not? No, then we will have an economy that will be vibrant. The Philippines will benefit from this. No, and while we have borrowed more money, we put it to good use. The country has to grow and accelerate faster. No, so giving opportunities to everyone is, I think, what this administration will have to do. No, because there's no other way for us but to grow. We are at a situation where we have borrowed money to be able to create this infrastructure to propel growth. No, so while it's also important to keep the wages at the proper level, considering that the inflation has gone up, I am not objecting to any wage increases, but it is really managing that right balance. No, because job generation should be the foremost thing that we should do. Creating more jobs for our people, that's what's important. And as jobs are created, then the law of supply demand, if there is what do you call this, greater demand for workers, then of course wages automatically will just go up because people will be fighting for talent. No? So I think I'm quite optimistic that we are hopefully moving in the right direction. And I hope that the next administration will really push for greater inclusivity.
Well, in the meantime, we're still in a pandemic, and the Department of Health announced today that we now have local transmission of the subvariant of Omicron. How worried are you about this development in terms of economic recovery?
Last Monday, we had a meeting with about 10 of the medical doctors, Dr. Salante, Nina Guiliani, and of course, Ted Herbosa, etc., and of course, some of the business organizations. We discussed these variants that are in South Africa and in other countries. There are concerns, but they're not really serious concerns because while these variants are more transmissible, they say they more or less have the same character as the previous variants, whereby it's still mild, but highly infectious. And if you are vaccinated, then you should be fine from being prevented from getting severe infection and even landing in hospital. What we were trying to drive at there is that we cannot increase alert levels in the next months and years, because it will be disastrous, not only for our entrepreneurs who are returning, their businesses are doing much better. To increase alert levels will decrease mobility and may be a huge disaster, as many of these people had to restructure their debt. So growth is very important, and I think the country needs growth. In the first quarter, 8%. So we have to continue with that kind of growth levels because we have borrowed a lot of money to be able to create this infrastructure necessary for us to grow. So for us to be able to repay these debts, then we have to grow faster. And I think it is possible. And that's why I was appealing to the government that let's get the process on the second booster approved. No, it's still with HTAC, and we have the vaccines or in the country. I'm told, close to 90 million vaccines, and we just can't deploy the second boosters because there is no clarity as to who can really get this. No? And to my mind, I suggested that let's just follow the CDC guidelines. No? And if there are other countries, let's look at them and let's implement it. But to me, since we buy Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J, and the CDC guidelines, to my mind, is adequate. For example, the CDC guidelines allows 50 years and above to take the second booster shot. No? So right now, what I heard, it's only the 60 years old. Right now, it's just immunocompromised. No? But how many of the people are immunocompromised? No? You're not going to consume much of those vaccines. You will not be able to protect those who have taken the vaccines earlier because these vaccines are already starting to wane. No? So, yes, it's very important for us to continue to maintain that wall of immunity because right now, that is what is allowing us greater mobility, rallies going out, happening with hundreds of thousands, and the infection levels are still muted. No? So, let's not push our luck too far.
Okay. Presidential Advisor on Entrepreneurship, Mr. Joey Concepcion. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. Ingat po.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ami. Thank you.
That'll be all for this Tuesday edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star, and we are One News.